Hello, I'm Jennifer Coffey from the Office of Special Education Programs, and I am the competition manager for the 326K. And that is a technical assistance and dissemination center focused on supporting implementation and scale up of evidence-based practices in states. Today, I'm going to talk a bit about the competition, about the resources that you may want to access to get you ready to submit your application, and specifically what we're looking for in an application for this center. If you have any questions following watching the webinar, watching the video, please do contact me at jennifer.coffey@ed.gov. Also, please note that this is not meant to be comprehensive. This is giving you a sense of what we at the department are looking for, hopefully getting your thinking going as you consider putting together an application. But there is much more in the notice inviting applications than I'm going to be sharing with you. Also, please do take a look at the common instructions for Department of Education discretionary grant programs. I think there are some helpful videos, there's some helpful directions, and it really does pay to take a look at everything prior to getting your application together. We published this notice February 22nd. The deadline for submitting the applications is April 25th. And please note that that is 11:59 p.m. Eastern time that your application is due. And then we have a deadline for intergovernmental review of June 22nd. And grantees will be announced. The funding will be announced for the new grantee October 1st, 2022. I should say by October 1st of 2022. So in the application package that has been made available for this notice, there's an applicant letter. There is in the NIA, the notice inviting applications, we have the Federal Register notice, the grants.gov system submission procedures and tips, which are very important that you understand how to upload your application. The priority description, selection criteria, and then general information on completing an application, transmittal instructions, and required forms. It is not insignificant, but please do take a look at all of it so that you are prepared. So first, I'm going to go through some program information, and specifically, I will talk about the purpose of this program, the eligible applicants for the program, and the funding level. So the overall program that this center fits within is the Technical Assistance and Dissemination Program. And TA&D, the purpose of it is to improve services and results for children with disabilities. And that means that we promote academic achievement and results for children with disabilities by providing technical assistance, supporting model demonstration projects, disseminating useful information, and implementing activities that are supported by scientifically based research. Now, this specific center, the National Center to Support Implementation and Scaling Up of Evidence-Based Practices, the purpose of the center is to support states' use of implementation science to create a statewide infrastructure that supports implementation of evidence-based practices, also known as EBPs. Eligible applicants are SEAs, LEAs, including public charter schools that are considered LEAs under state law, IHEs, which is institutions of higher education, other public agencies, private nonprofit organizations, outlying areas, Indian tribes or tribal organizations, and for-profit organizations. The funding levels, we estimate one award, and we are awarding 1.2 up to 1.2 million per year for this award. And the project period is up to 60 months, so up to 5 years. Next, I'm going to talk about some of the competition information. Specifically, I'm going to talk about expected project outcomes, why we have this center, basically, the selection criteria that peer reviewers will be using to determine scores for the applications, the application requirements, and then the general requirements as well. So expected project outcomes, we expect, and this is at a minimum, there are other things included in the notice. Again, this is not meant to be comprehensive, but I want to point you to the most important expected outcomes. That this center will develop implementation science micro-credentials. So the purpose of those micro-credentials is to support those people who want to understand implementation science and how to use it to create an infrastructure in a state's education system. So if you think about the state's education system, there's the state level, the regional level, potentially the district level, the school level, and how implementation science can be used at all those levels of a state system to support the use of evidence-based practices. So these micro-credentials would support folks who want to be trained in implementation science. There might be different levels of training, a compilation of training that could be acquired to have the highest level of maybe an implementation specialist. But the idea is that this training would be available publicly to all education personnel who are interested in taking the classes, the courses. A minimum of 25 individuals we expect to be trained annually as implementation science specialists through the completion of these micro-credentials. We also expect the creation of a technical assistance hub for OSEP-funded doctoral programs that results in at least 5 of the doctoral programs integrating implementation science into their program of study. So the big idea here is that the micro-credentials would be publicly available. In addition, there will be a place, a web-based place perhaps, a hub where doctoral programs can receive technical assistance so that they can integrate implementation science into their course of study. And we're continuing with the expected project outcomes here. Another expected outcome would be a community of practice for IHE faculty interested in learning about implementation science and how to integrate implementation science into the curricula. So this might be connected to the hub we were talking about earlier. It is up to the applicant to describe what this would look like. Integration of implementation science into the program of study of at least 5 OSEP-funded state leadership projects. And so you can see the alpha there, 84.325L. So these are, as we say in the expected outcome, these are state leadership projects. So the SEA, State Educational Agency, is funded to support either future leaders or current leaders in special education. And implementation science has been used by some of these projects already, and we can further integrate implementation science there with the help of the center. The next expected project outcome is an infrastructure that facilitates scaling implementation supports, including developing the capacity of regional TA providers in 8 states. As I mentioned before, not every state has regional technical assistance or professional development providers or regional systems. Some states do though, and we want to make use of those regional systems because there are not enough personnel, not enough TA providers at the state level to support every district in their state and get those supports to the building level. And we're continuing the expected project outcomes. A community of practice for states interested in learning more about implementation science, but they're not yet ready for full implementation. And so again, this is building interest, building readiness, learning from each other, and learning from the center. The integration of implementation science frameworks and related resources into the provision of TA by at least 5 OSEP-funded TA centers. And so the idea here is that implementation science can be useful for all of our technical assistants. There are some technical assistance centers that are well-versed that have been supported in the past by our TA center. There will be new centers that have not been, and this will give them the opportunity to integrate implementation science into how they do their work, their processes. I wanted to highlight one other expectation. This is not within the major project outcomes, but it is an expectation in the life of the grant, and I would expect it would be early in the grant, that the project will create a dissemination plan. And specifically, we want that dissemination plan to describe how the center will systematically distribute information, products, and services to varied intended audiences using a variety of dissemination strategies to promote awareness and use of the center's products and services. This is really critical. The reason I'm highlighting it here is because without a good communication plan, you really can't expect too many folks who are not receiving intensive services, intensive TA already, to use the services, to use the hub, to use the micro credentials, the things that we were talking about before. A really strong communications dissemination plan is important here. So that's something I want the applicants to be thinking about now, and to be able to describe that in their application and then have a full-fledged dissemination plan once they are funded. I also wanted to flag the collaboration with the Center to Improve Program and Project Performance. We call them CIP. So CIP is a contract that works with certain technical assistance grantees to help them further develop their evaluation plan. So you will describe your evaluation plan in your application as specified. But in addition to that, once you are funded, once you have your cooperative agreement, you will have a liaison who works with CIP to further develop, to improve, to extend your evaluation plan. CIP brings a lot of expertise with evaluation, and projects don't always have the opportunity to work with an evaluator step by step from the very beginning to develop a really strong evaluation plan. So this will be that opportunity. So you can see you will need sufficient staff time to work with CIP, especially that first 6 months is really important. You'll need a liaison to work with CIP, sufficient funds to carry out the tasks of implementing the evaluation plan. So please do take a good look at that section. As promised, here are some of the administrative requirements. And specifically, actually, I will go back to a few of the requirements, but we have the selection criteria here. And here are the point values. And I'm going to walk through each of the selection criteria and their indicators. So for significance of the project, that is 10 points. You can receive up to 10 points from the peer reviewers. And this has two different indicators. One is the extent to which specific gaps or weaknesses in services, infrastructure, or opportunities have been identified and will be addressed by the proposed project, including the nature and magnitude of those gaps or weaknesses. The second is the importance or magnitude of the results or outcomes likely to be attained by the proposed project. Project services has 35 points that are possible. And when we say the secretary here, the peer reviewer sits in place of the secretary. So they're considering the quality and sufficiency of strategies for ensuring equal access and treatment for eligible project participants who are members of groups that have traditionally been underrepresented based on race, color, national origin, gender, age, or disability. In addition, the secretary and peer reviewers here considers the extent to which the goals, objectives, and outcomes to be achieved by the proposed project are clearly specified and measurable, the extent to which the services to be provided reflect up-to-date knowledge from research and effective practice, the training or professional development services to be provided are of sufficient quality, intensity, and duration to lead to improvements in practice among recipients, and the use of efficient strategies, including the use of technology as appropriate and leveraging of non-project resources. The evaluation plan section, you can receive up to 20 points. And that is looking at the extent to which the methods of evaluation are thorough, feasible, and appropriate to the goals, objectives, and outcomes of the proposed project. The extent to which the methods of evaluation provide for examining the effectiveness of project implementation strategies, the extent to which the methods of evaluation will provide performance feedback and permit periodic assessment of progress toward achieving intended outcomes. Adequacy of project resources and quality of project personnel. That section can receive up to 15 points. And part of what we look at, the peer reviewers look at in this section, is the extent to which you, the applicant, encourage applications for employment from persons who are members of groups that have traditionally been underrepresented based on race, color, national origin, gender, age, or disability. Also, for the adequacy of project resources and quality of project personnel, the peer reviewers are going to be looking for the qualifications, including relevant training and experience of key project personnel, the relevance and demonstrated commitment of each partner in the proposed project, the implementation and success of the project, and the extent to which the budget is adequate to support the proposed project. The quality of the management plan section can receive up to 20 points. This is the adequacy of the management plan to achieve the objectives of the proposed project on time and within budget. And this includes clearly defined responsibilities, timelines, and milestones for accomplishing the project tasks. The extent to which the time commitments of the project director and principal investigator and other key project personnel are appropriate and adequate to meet the objectives of the proposed project. And finally, how the applicant will ensure that a diversity of perspectives are brought to bear in the operation of the proposed project, including those of parents, teachers, the business community, a variety of disciplinary and professional fields, recipients or beneficiaries of services, or others as appropriate. As for application requirements, you must include a logic model in Appendix A. You will include your personnel loading charts and timelines as applicable to illustrate the management plan described in the narrative. And in the budget, you should include travel funds to support your project director's attendance at the OSIP sponsored meetings as specified in the priority. So please do take a look at the travel requirements. You also must maintain a website that meets government or industry recognized standards for accessibility. You will need to ensure that annual progress is made toward meeting project goals and that annual progress is posted on the project website. You will need to transfer any pertinent resources and products if appropriate. That means if you are a new grantee, newly taking on the center, you would need to transfer the pertinent resources and products from the previous center. General requirements. The recipients of funding under this competition must make positive efforts to employ and advance in employment qualified individuals with disabilities. And each applicant for and recipient of funding under this program must involve individuals with disabilities or parents of individuals with disabilities ages birth through 26 in planning, implementing, and evaluating the project. And as you can tell from this general requirement, planning does mean putting together the application as well. And you also must describe your steps to ensure equitable access to and participation in your program for students, teachers, and other program beneficiaries with special needs. So now we get to the submission information, and I'll talk about how you can submit your application and a few tips on submission. Grants.gov is the way that applications are submitted at this point. Applications may not be submitted via email, and applications must be submitted no later than, that should say, 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on April 25th, 2022. Application narrative sections and all other attachments to the application must be uploaded as PDF read-only, non-modifiable format file. Applications are submitted electronically using grants.gov, and they may not be submitted via email. They must be submitted no later than 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on April 25th. Application narrative sections and all other attachments to the application must be uploaded as PDF read-only, non-modifiable format files. Application tips include the maximum funding level, which is $1.2 million per year for up to 5 years. So please do not exceed this amount in your budget request. Read the grants.gov submission procedures and tips for applicants very carefully in section B of your application package. We now have page limit recommendations. Previously, we had page limit requirements, and so this is a change. We recommend that you limit your application narrative to 70 pages and that you use 8.5 by 11 with 1-inch margins, that you double space, and that you use 12-point font or larger. Those are all recommendations. They are no longer requirements. I do want to share that you need to be thinking about their reviewers and how they will perceive of an application that is much longer than that, or goes much outside the boundaries that are provided. Just a few reminders about Appendix A. We talked about this a little bit earlier. Reviewers will be instructed to review the content of Appendix A. That is where you can put charts, tables, figures, graphs, screenshots, logic models that provide information that directly relates to the application requirements for the narrative. So it's very connected to the narrative. It should not be used for supplementary information. When you're using Appendix A, the recommendations are much more flexible. You can use single space in Appendix A or any appendix. A few submission tips: please register early. Grants.gov can take 5 or more business days to complete. And then be sure that your registration with the System for Award Management, SAM, is current. I would do that early on in the process. Submit early. I have seen a lot of unfortunate occurrences for folks who wait till the last day. If something is wrong with your application, you need to know it so you can fix it. And if you're doing it right at the last moment, you don't have that time to make the fix. And please do verify that grants.gov received your submission on time and that it was validated successfully. And there are instructions in the application packet that describe how to go about that validation. Again, here's my email address, jennifer.coffee@ed.gov, my phone number, 202-245-6673. I recommend emailing me. It's a bit easier, and then we can set up a time to talk. There's also a grants.gov support desk number, 1-800-518-4726. I recommend you have that handy in case anything goes wrong. I am able to help with the contents of the application and answer questions related to that. I cannot help with grants.gov. That would be their support desk. And I look forward to speaking with you if you have questions, and have a good day.